I am Nam, 29 years old, and have been married to Mai for over a year. Our married life is stable, except that Mai's job often requires her to go on long business trips. When Mai took on a 3-month assignment in a faraway province, she was worried that I would be sad alone, so she suggested that I temporarily stay at my mother-in-law's house. Lan's mother lived alone after her father-in-law passed away, although the house was old. It was warm. I had known her since I first fell in love with Mai, but this was the first time I had lived with her for a long time. In the beginning, everything went normally. Lan's mother was an experienced, skillful woman who always knew how to make others feel secure. She taught me how to cook, and I fixed some broken things in the house. The comfortable cooperation between the two made the house strangely peaceful. Perhaps that was why I began to realize something I shouldn't have realized. My mother-in-law was a very gentle woman, sometimes even more delicate than mine. Living far away from my wife, I often feel empty during dinners with my mother. Our conversation naturally continues. My mother often asks me questions, not in a probing way, but with the sincere concern of an adult for a child. Through intense contact, I also clearly see my mother's loneliness after many years of living quietly alone. I love my mother as a child, but sometimes in the gaps, I feel a vague vibration of myself drifting. I know that feeling is wrong, but people are sometimes weaker than we think. That night it rained heavily. The wind hit the windows, making the house a bit cold. Lan's mother caught a cold from getting caught in the rain while cleaning the flower pots in the yard. I made her a cup of ginger tea, found a damp towel to put on her face, and sat next to her, waiting for her fever to go down. It was the first time I sat so close to her. So close that I could clearly see every line on the face of a woman who had experienced so much in her life. When she looked at me, her face did not avoid. In that moment, no one said anything, but I knew we were both lost in emotions that we were not allowed to let grow. I felt my heart pounding and also saw the confusion on my mother's face. Mom gently pulled her leg up higher and said, in a voice trembling with fever but still strong, "Nom, you are my husband, I am your mother-in-law. We cannot let temporary emotions hurt him." Those words pulled me back to reality. I felt like someone had just poured a bucket of cold water on my head. I turned away, my heart in turmoil. I knew Mom was right, but I also understood that both of our feelings were not intentional. They came from loneliness, lack of affection, and closeness that lasted day after day. But whatever the reason, it was still something that we were not allowed to take, even one step further. The next morning, my mother called me to the dining table, her eyes not blaming me, only the calmness of someone who had thought it through. She said I should move to my grandparents' house, or a friend's house for a few days, so that we both had time to sort out our feelings. I nodded, not arguing, not explaining. Before leaving the house, I sincerely told my mother that I was very grateful to her because she had kept her cool when it was most needed. If she had not spoken up that day, perhaps I had made a mistake that could not be corrected. Even a passing misguided feeling is enough to destroy a family's happiness. When I returned, she was tired after the long trip. She hugged me tightly and said she had thanked me a lot. That moment made me feel like a fool for letting my heart waver. Looking at my wife smiling, looking at her and wondering about my mother, I realized even more that just a small mistake could cause everything to collapse. As for Lan's mother, after that incident, she changed a lot. She started joining a book club, going for a morning walk, meeting her old friends. She no longer let loneliness weaken her heart. As for me, I remind myself every day that feelings are not always real. Sometimes it is just a temporary lack that makes people misunderstand. If we are not alert enough, we will hurt innocent people. I am grateful to my mother for helping me see that clearly before it was too late. And I'm also grateful to myself for stepping back in time. From that experience, I understand that family not only needs love, but also courage to overcome the headwinds of emotions. And the biggest lesson I have learned is, Sometimes the most important battle in life is not to win or lose with others, but to conquer the wrong emotions in your heart. I still remember those days very clearly. The time when if I had been one step slower, I could have lost my whole life. When I went on a business trip for 3 months, I moved in with Lance's mother. The first day, I put my suitcase in the corner of the house. I had no idea that the following days would be the biggest challenge of my marriage. Lance's mother was a very emotional person, but hid her sadness in her behavior. The house was spacious, quiet, and had a slight hump from her father's old disciples. Every night, my mother and I often eat dinner together. At first, it was just small talk. My mother asked me about my work. I asked her about her health. But gradually, the distance between my mother-in-law and I naturally narrowed in a way that was difficult to explain. There were rainy nights when the electricity short-circuited while I was cooking. I ran out to the yard to turn off the circuit breaker, and when I turned back, I saw my mother, frantically wiping up the water on the floor. I sat down to help, and our hands accidentally touched. A small moment, but it made me jump up as if I had just woken up. My mother also paused, but we both continued working in silence. It was those seemingly harmless collisions that sowed a strange feeling in my heart. Another night, the roof leaked. I climbed up to fix it, and it suddenly started to rain. My mother rushed out to call me in, gave me a handkerchief, and urged me to change my clothes and pull the rice bran. But what I will never forget is the look on my mother's face when she looked at me, mixed with worry and a bit of loneliness that had lasted for many years. That moment made my heart flutter. Then came the time my mother hurt her wrist from lifting a heavy basin of water. I touched her hand, wondering if it was swollen. She withdrew her hand, but the awkwardness between us made the atmosphere ambiguous. A familiar scent of a middle-aged, mature, and experienced woman made me lose track of what I was thinking. I knew clearly I must not let that feeling grow. But the more one tries to avoid it, the easier it is to fall into it. One night the power went out and the house was dark. Mom was afraid of thunder and lightning, so she sat closer to me while we used the phone to light the way to get candles. I could hear her breathing clearly, and she leaned on my arm a little to avoid tripping over things. Just that alone made my heart pound. I told myself to stand up to create some distance. But at that moment, my legs felt like they were on the ground. Then the day my mother got a bad cold, the fateful night that made me realize. I sat next to her, constantly giving her a wet towel. She lay on the bed, her eyes weak, but looking at me with emotion. In that moment, I clearly felt the fragile line between care and another emotion, a feeling that if I touched it one more step, everything would fall apart. Mom gently held my hand, then let go. Immediately, she turned her face inward and said in a hoarse voice, "Mom, we're getting too close to the line. Don't let yourself get confused between loneliness and love." I froze. I understood. Mom understood, and we both knew that. Just one more moment of weakness was all it took. This family will not be complete the next morning. The atmosphere between the two of us was strangely normal. Mom still got up early, still made tea. But her eyes were different. Quick-tempered, rational, and determined. Mom told me to go back to my parents' house for a few days so she could think about herself. I understood that it wasn't a polite way to send me away. Mom was the way for both of us to keep the most precious thing, family. When I returned from her business trip, she hugged me as if I had disappeared. At that moment, I realized that with just a little less restraint, a little less reason, I could have done something that would have hurt my. For the rest of her life, I felt ashamed of myself. But also grateful that my mother was the one who stopped me first. The day my mother got well, she smiled softly and said, "You know, sometimes old people like me feel lonely. But because I understand that I have to be more alert, so it's not to hurt anyone." From then on, I respected my mother more and also became more mature. I understood that human emotions can unintentionally exceed the limit in intimate situations, but the strength of each person lies in knowing when to stop.